You know, in the first Harry Potter movie, when Hagrid I think it's when he's taking Harry to Gringotts for the first time, and he does this thing where he takes his umbrella and he taps these random bricks on a wall, and it opens up and they go to Gringotts. I have this silly little Go fantasy of having a safe that is built so that the only way to open it is to tap on points in a 19 by 19 grid that correspond to, let's say, the first 50 moves of a pro game. I think, I don't know, just the thought of going up to this safe in front of someone and just tapping 50 different random little dots on it, and them going like, how the heck did you memorize that? I think that kind of, it's a funny little fantasy I have. But I mean, that's kind of like a cool project for someone who knows how to do very technical things with their engineering abilities and things like that, but quite out of my reach to fulfill. Welcome to Starpoint, the show about Go for Go fans away from the board. And this episode is a little bit of it's been a long time coming. I mentioned an episode like this a long time ago. For the long-time listeners here, you may remember I commented on doing an episode about why Go might be good for children. And that episode did not come until today. I'm going to go over a study that I found on... There's actually a website called Polgote, which is created by European pro Mateusz Surma, and he actually has a few studies on the website that I found to be fascinating, but I wanted to focus on the one study. I wanted to do a deeper dive into it, make sure I understand what was going on in there, and I wanted to share this study with you on Go and its effects on the cognitive performance of 6-year-old children. It's a study that was done in, I'm gonna butcher this name, Skovoroda Kharkiv National Pedagogical University in Ukraine. So since it's a pedagogical university, which is really cool, I think they have basically they just have education for programs for children there, and the scientists get to do research on these children. That's what I'm thinking is what's going on here. But it was also done in collaboration with several departments. For example, the Department of Olympic and Professional Sport and Sports Games, the Department of Surgical Diseases and Topographic Anatomy. I don't know exactly how that department really plays into the study. I still don't know. The Department of Bringing Up and Technology of Preschool Education, Department of Primary, Preschool, and Professional Education, and the Department of Choreography. So it is a multi-department study that was done in 2018. So it's been 6 years now. And it was a small kind of a case study level, I think, with 30 children of age of 6 years. And then these children were divided into camps of 10 children each in these three groups. And each group was treated differently for about a month. So the first group was an experimental group, and these children had Go lessons incorporated into their regular schedules. I would say I think twice a week was the amount that they did for about a month, a total of 10 lessons, so maybe a little over a month of 50 minutes each. The second group did a similar thing, but with added physical exercise activity sprinkled in there as well. And then finally, the third group was a control group that just went about their day as they usually did, but they also participated in cognitive evaluation to measure the difference between the three groups. Now, again, this is a pretty small sample size, 30 children, 3 groups of 10. So, you can take the results here with a grain of salt, but I think you can be the judge of how significant these results are. But I think there's definitely something going on when you look at what happened. So we'll get into that a little later, but I want to maybe first illustrate a little more in detail about the 3 groups. So Group A was the go-only group. And they did, so again, 10 lessons over the course of, let's say, a month or so, of 50 minutes each. And for the first 10 minutes, they got to choose simple activities related to Go from, like, I think from like books. There's like a book called Game Go from Acquaintance to 20Q. And they got to choose whether they wanted to do lessons for those and like which lessons they wanted to do from the books. I don't know. It's like, I guess just kind of warm up book work that they did. And then they played around 3 games over the next however many minutes, 40 minutes or so. And they were, I guess, like 10-minute games, I guess. I guess that kind of makes sense, right? There's some downtime. And then each game they changed color. And so they did this for, again, like a month or more. Second group did something very similar. They also chose activities from that textbook, but they only played 1 game, which was like a longer game, like a 15-minute game. And then for the next, I don't know, I think it's only like 5 more minutes left. I don't know if the timing says 1 to 10 minutes, and then 10 to 25 minutes, and then 25 to 30 minutes. Oh, right, there's more stuff later on for the incentive club ratings that they did at the end, which I didn't really understand fully. But basically, they just did like 5 minutes of physical activity, like relay races, outdoor games, and stuff. So it's just like a modification of Group A. So Group A did fully Go lesson, like for 50 minutes. Group B did a mixture of Go and a little bit of physical activity. And then the final group, not much to comment on. They didn't really do anything. They just did regular classes and whatever they did in daycare. Okay, so after the month was up, they did before the month of Go education and things like that, they did a cognitive test. Well, they did 2 to be exact. One was called the Schulte method. And this one this method was established by a German psychiatrist named Walter Schulte. And it was used as a psychodiagnostic test to study the effects of attention. And it's widely used now as a test by psychologists for various different studies and methods. But I think it's also done with adults, not just children. But basically what the test is, and you can actually find, I'll try to link in the description an example of this test. But basically, there's a grid that is like a 5x5 grid. In this study, it was a 5x5 grid. And there were numbers, various colors, and in a random order from 1 to 25 throughout this grid. And so the test is to have your focus go into the middle point of the grid. And while you're focusing on that middle point of the grid, without really having your eyes move around and search for the grid, the idea is for you to track all the numbers from 1 to 25 in order and find them and do that as fast as you can. So imagine you're looking at this grid and staring at the center of it, and you see all these numbers all over you, but you have to use your peripheral vision to find the number 1. And then once you noticed where it is, then you move on to number 2, and so on and so forth, as fast as you can. I tried this myself using a YouTube video, and I don't know why I kept on like getting stuck at number 9. I would stare at it and be like, okay, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, there's 5, there's 6, and so on. And then when I got to 9, I was like, where's 9? Where's number 9? And I did it again in another test, and I also couldn't find 9. What is with me on the number 9? But it's an interesting little test. It's funny because, you know, you go on YouTube and you see everybody in the comments bragging about how they did. But it's an interesting test. I think I don't know exactly what it indicates, but apparently it's a widely used psychological test. For focus and peripheral vision, attention, things like that. Okay. Anyway, now that you understand what that test was, the children, when they did this test before this whole study, they seemed to get around 700 milliseconds between, I'm assuming this 700 milliseconds is not, you know, you didn't do the entire test in 700 milliseconds. That would be physically impossible. But they probably calculated an average of how long it took to find each number. So like 700 milliseconds from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on and so forth. And so again, all three groups seem to hover around the 700 millisecond average mark. Let's start with the control group. The control group, well, the thing is that you are improving at anything you do more than once. And so when you try this test, the first time you're going to be like, I don't really get it. Oh, okay, I kind of get it. And you might have that time. Subsequent times, or, you know, they've also grown. They're only 6 years old. They're highly, you know, children develop very quickly. So there was improvement even in the control group. They got, let's say, around 650 milliseconds after the period of, you know, altered education was over. For them, it was just kind of the same thing, but they just went back and did it again. So they did improve by like a 50 millisecond margin. The Go lesson group A, the ones that took a full-on Go lesson twice a week for, let's say, 5 weeks, their time, in comparison to the control group, which was 550 milliseconds, was closer to I'm messing this grand reveal up. Group C, the control group, was 650. My bad. 650-ish milliseconds. The Go group was around 575 milliseconds of time. So there was a significant distance in terms of improvement and difference between Group A and the control group. Now, you might be wondering what happened to the group with the physical education breaks. They were caught right in between the two. So their group seemed to average around 600 milliseconds. So to recap, Group A went from 700 milliseconds down to, let's say, 575 milliseconds. Group B, the physical education and Go group, went from 700 to around 600, and Group C, the control group, went from 700 to around 650. So there was a marked improvement in performance for the children who took the Go lessons. The other test that they used to measure improvement across the cognitive performance between all these groups was something that they're referring to as the Ermakov button selection test. This one I couldn't find any information on. I don't think this one's as widely known. But from my understanding, basically it's a computer program test where, or there's like it's like a touchscreen test, and an image appears in random spots on the screen, and they have to tap the screen where the image appears. And so the initial performance of, I think it's like a timed thing. So there's a certain fixed time sequence, and you're trying to get as many as you can. And they're not just randomly appearing like in a regular interval. They're also random time intervals. So you have to kind of keep yourself on your toes because you don't know when the next one will pop up. And so this one had a little more variation between the groups in terms of the initial benchmark. So I'll just kind of go over the improvement metrics here. So Group C, the control group, went from getting 14 correct images on the test to 15. Very small improvement. Group A, the Go only group, went from getting 14 correct images on the test to 17. So they had a significant improvement compared to the Group C. And then Group B, the one that took lessons with PE break as well as Go, went from 12. So they weren't as good as the other two groups. They kind of they were a little worse at finding the images before they even did any of the education. They went from 12, but they went all the way up to 17. So they had the biggest improvement. So what the researchers here are arguing is that the physical education improves, having that in conjunction with the Go lessons, improves the children's ability to switch attention from one thing to another more quickly. I don't know how much I understand that theory, and especially since it's such a small sample size, as well as the fact that, the groups, the fact that there was such small sample size means that there were variations between the performances of the specific kids in the groups. So you don't know what the variations between the children are, but it seems like these tests, the goal of these tests is to really measure several cognitive factors like concentration and mental fatigue and things like that. And the fact that you see a patterned improvement in both of these tests, and I think the numbers are big enough that you would say this isn't just random. It really speaks to the fact that maybe there is something behind Go that really trains our brain to become more spry and soak up certain things better. I don't know. Or maybe this is just applying to children. I would love to know how this works with adults, right? Let's say you take the same experiment and you throw a bunch of adults into the exact same experiment. Does the same result happen? Do the adults improve the same way? Or is this just exclusive to 6-year-old children when their brains are younger and they're easier to mold? I would love to know if there are any studies done on that. And I would also like to know whether this is really specific to Go, or can you replace Go with various other forms of education like chess, for example, or computer programming, or any other kind of similar logic-based activity that requires concentration? I would love to know if there's a difference in Go, and if that difference exists, what difference is it? And okay, so that's not the end of this experiment. There is one interesting little side note conclusion here. So apparently they did, this is kind of a case study experiment that they performed over the course of a month or so. But they also kind of did a longitudinal sort of check-in. And what they found was when they talked to the class leaders, they call them class leaders. I don't know if that's different from teachers. But when they talked with the people who were in charge of these kids, Group A, Group B, and C, they noticed, this is a conversational anecdotal thing, this is not a measured scientific thing, but they noticed that the children who did Go education performed homework and full assignments and completed additional tasks compared to the other children. And they also noted that the children who did not go to Go class were found to become more prone to being sick, and they didn't get as good attendance in the school. So it's kind of, I don't know how much you should really weigh this anecdotal, conversational type of evidence, but I don't know. Maybe it's an inspiration for those people who want to perform more studies on the effects of Go in education, to kind of think, okay, does it do more than just cognitive ability? Does it also help with long-term fortitude of your brain to perform different academic tasks and things like that throughout the rest of the year? I don't know. Maybe this kind of looks a little bit spun to me by the researchers, maybe, to say like, hey, Go is really good for kids. Just to quote, children who did not play Go at the end of the year were psychologically exhausted and difficult to concentrate on tasks. So, like, I would like a little more concrete evidence for something like that. I would even maybe, it's an interesting observation. Obviously, if you are a teacher and you notice like your kids were split up into 3 groups, and then suddenly like, oh, the kids who were attending Go classes were, we're tending to do better in school after that for the next few months. It's like, that's useful information to know conversationally, but it requires more rigor academically to follow up on that. So all in all, very interesting study, and it does makes you think like, okay, what are the cognitive benefits of Go? And I'm wondering what they are, although I think most of us don't play Go for some kind of cognitive benefit. That might be a side reason, but I think that most of us like to play Go because we love the game of Go. But it's you can't ignore the fact that Go requires us to use many of our mental faculties. Concentration is huge, right? Like, I think there's a lot of people who can't concentrate on something for a long time, and Go kind of harnesses all of your motivation to concentrate with your mind on a specific task for a long period of time. I was trying to teach, I mentioned this a long time ago in one of the other episodes. I was trying to teach my fiance's nephew how to play, and he doesn't have a very long attention span, so it was pretty difficult to get him to learn. And it was, not the best environment. It was like in the car or something like that. But I can see how something like this, if it's like a structured format and you do it for some period of time, it could help with concentration, especially if the kid has an interest and sees that it's something that they can improve at, sees that something they can get praised for, and beat other kids at the game. That's always exciting, right? No matter what you're doing, if you make it a game and you're able to show that you're better than someone else at the task, that always motivates someone to try a little harder, and it could trick the brain to training itself. And I think I think we should use studies like this to think about how we can integrate Go into our lives in a way that benefits people. I know that there is evidence of activities like Go helping with Alzheimer's prevention, and maybe I'll do an episode on that if I can get some studies on that as well in the future. But I just wanted to share this interesting study with you all, so I hope you found it interesting as well. The Paul Gaultier article that I found this study on also mentions a couple other studies, and it also includes the full text of the study itself on that website, so I'll link that in the description if you're interested in checking that out. I'll try to cover the other studies in a future episode. I also was able to, you know how academic stuff is, like every study will reference 20 other studies, so I was able to amass a good amount of studies related to Go, but it takes a long time to get through these things. They're very dense, so I'll see when I can do another one of these in the future. But for now, it's time for the DDK Advice Corner, and the tip of the day is be a sheepdog. What I mean by that is, well, what I saw was a player who was well ahead. They had a huge swath of territory on the board, and their opponent decides to plop a stone in that swath. Now, you should be able to kill that stone, in that situation, depending on how much size you have. But what I saw in that game, they definitely should have been able to kill that stone. But they made a fatal mistake. They attached to that stone and gave it this freedom to use some Aji to magically create life for itself within that space. So my advice to that player and to you guys is to be a sheepdog. Don't touch that stone and corral it around. It's got nowhere to go. If it's got nowhere to go, just find the biggest point of escape for that. Just plop a stone there and just see where it runs. Every time it tries to run, just kind of plop a stone at a fence down on that area and just try to think, like, if I block this stone's route of escape here, where can it really go and how much space does it need to live? So don't attach to it, corral it, gently corral it around in your area. Sometimes you might find that this will allow your opponent to live in that area. You're going to have to experiment and learn from it, but in the most cases, you're going to want to gently corral it and just kind of take up all the space around it, like you're putting a little prison cell for that stone to die in your territory. So that's the DDK Advice Corner of the day. Be a sheepdog. And now it's time for listener mail. We had a bit of a listener mail drought last week, but then we're back at it again, and there's like a ton of listener mail this week. So let's get through all this awesome mail. First one comes from Martin. He says, "Hi, Justin. As usual, big fan of your podcast. I wanted to comment on the mental barriers keeping one from ranking up. I faced one myself. Probably I am still facing it. However, I think I am getting better. My problem is playing habit moves. Probably it is because I stuck too long at a certain rank. Then moves become habits. I play them too fast. I posted my problem on Reddit and the community was amazing. I got several very thoughtful replies. Some of them offered me skill-based advice, but many of them really gave me more meta advices. One poster checked out my OGS profile and pointed out I wasn't using my time. That resulted in playing reflex moves, which aren't always the best." Well, hello again, Martin. Thanks again for writing in with your very thoughtful comments. I think the Reddit community for Arbaduk is amazing, and there's just a whole bunch of people who love playing Go. So when someone has a problem with the game, it's like they just chime in and they offer to help. And I think it's always a great sign when they look through your your OGS profile and actually see what kind of pattern of play that you're doing, because that really gives you like a more holistic ability to give advice to that player. And a lot of players, they ask for advice, but they don't post any games. They don't post anything. So it's like, how are we supposed to help you? Like, we can give you very generic advice, but a lot of the advice is so specific to each player. And I totally know what you mean by the habit moves. I think a lot of players are stuck playing their bad habit moves. I think it's because we built our skill on habits. We realized, oh, these moves are good and these moves are bad. I'm going to play all these good moves. And when we did that, we found ourselves to be better players. And so then you come to the point where you can't get better because you're just playing those same moves over and over again. And you don't want to stop playing the moves because that's kind of the foundation of why you're good in the first place. So you're kind of scared to veer away from it. But it's always important to experiment with our knowledge. Question yourself. All the moves that you normally play, before you play them, say like, hey, do I really need to play it like this? What other thing can I do? Why can't I do this? Like, I feel like I can do this, like, move that I never play, but I don't know why I wouldn't be able to do that, so let me try it and see what happens. I think that's a good habit to have, to always tear down the wall, like the structure of your Go skill, and rebuild it back up again and again. I think that's probably a good thing to do. Continuing on, okay, so that was the problem. What was the cure? I was given two very fine pieces of advice. The first one was a especially hard one. Use at least 20 seconds for every move. Damn, that was and is still hard. The other one was actually a fun one. If you want to break habits, create another account with a worse rating. Then force yourself to lose by a slight margin. That forces you to play out of the box, but still play insightful moves. Only this time, they should be slightly worse than your opponent's moves. I did this for a while and I really changed my style. Now I am doing better with using my time, but still, this habit is very hard to come over. Yes, super hard. It's very mental, right? It's not like a Go skill, it's like a mental skill. To use at least 20 seconds for every move, it really... it's very difficult for many people to do that. And to know what you're going to play and just sit there trying to think for 20 seconds, that's hard. That's gotta be, and especially for certain moves. It's a little, I think a little over the top, to be honest. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go that far. I haven't gone that far. Maybe I should. But I have made myself like do that for a while, and that did help improve my game. I think the thing is that people underestimate what they can do in a short period of time. I've said this before. You have 30 seconds to play a move, and you see like one or two moves that you might be able to play, and you're like, there's nothing I can read. All the situations are so complex, I can't do anything in 30 seconds. I'm just gonna play the move that I thought of. But you'd be really surprised how much reading you're losing out on and how much evaluation time you're losing out on by not using your time. And you're reminding me that I should do that too. And I mean, I haven't been playing live games as much, so I'll probably be really bad at this. But I wanted to see what your other thing was. Then force yourself to lose by a slight margin. Oh, yeah. I don't think I can ever do that. To be honest, I can't do that. I can't force myself to lose, but I really need to try at least to make myself try to play an even game. I think that's an experiment that I want to try in the future, which is just play a game that you're not trying to win necessarily, but play a fair and even game without conceding anything. I think it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. Continuing, anyway, love your podcast, and I also love the direction that your topics move. These are really interesting thoughts and give some inspiration on what to think of. Greetings from Austria, Martin. P.S. Do you have any numbers on your listeners? I would be curious on how many people listen to your amazing podcast. Thanks again for writing in, Martin. Let's say we're averaging around like 500 listens per episode, and that's split between like Spotify and YouTube and other podcast platforms. And that might seem like a smallish number to some of you, but first of all, 500 people listening to anything that I do is like actually kind of crazy if you imagine 500 people in the same room. And the other thing is that I think the Starpoint listeners they're kind of committed, and it's a podcast, so they listen to quite a long, if not the whole episode, they listen to a long duration of the episode, and I think that's very high quality, a very high quality audience to have. To someone who just listens to me ramble for an hour is like, I mean, I can't ask for much more. I'm very happy with the number of listeners that Starpoint has. Hopefully that satisfied your curiosity. Thanks for writing in again, Martin. And Jarubek writes, the psychological barrier definitely exists. I've noticed this very early on since the first year I started playing. As I start giving back to the community by teaching others, I also notice that any players can be categorized based on their passive-aggressive and solid-greedy. The most common is passive-solid and aggressive-greedy type of beginner. Both is also hardest to change. Hey, that's a really cool idea. I like that. Passive versus aggressive and solid versus greedy. Those are good dichotomies and like continuums for evaluating the personalities of Go players, and it reminds me of like the MBTI. I've actually wanted to do an MBTI episode for Go, and that's made me kind of like, it's reminded me that I wanted to do that episode, so I want to maybe take that thought and sit with it for a while. Continuing, as they manage to shift their play towards equilibrium, usually their in real life personalities also reflects the movement. Generally speaking, Go can be used to regulate emotion and change a person's behavior to be better. Interesting thoughts, Ninjarubik. It's so hard to measure these types of things. The change of your personality as you play Go. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give that one some thought, because it's like the thing is that people change without, people change no matter what. So the changes you go through, like how well can you attribute those changes to playing Go, and not? I guess if you become like a super aggressive person while your Go is becoming passive, that wouldn't make sense. But I don't know. I feel like it's an interesting topic. So thanks for your thoughts, Ninjarubik. And Danger Noodle writes, I think that the author of the listener mail is definitely onto something. One key thing to improving the game is definitely improving your reasoning, and the lapses in this reasoning is definitely linked to your playing style. Where I think both of you go a bit off track is that in order to understand the deeper root causes of your mistakes, you still need to go through the process of isolating and cataloging those mistakes. This is something that I started doing recently from your SGF note-taking episodes, where I take major mistakes from my recent games and I create SGF files which are problem collections. Let me see if I'm understanding you correctly, because you're saying that you're kind of talking more about the mistakes, which I think is like the studying aspect, no? Because we were talking about in the last episode with Eric, it's like we were trying to split the studying side of it versus the psychological mental barrier side. And I think, I don't know, maybe you're saying that these things are more connected than we're making them out to be. Because, and I think I can see that as well, where if you lack the skill, you will maybe not use your brain as much. Like you won't use your reasoning skills as much. But if you acquire the skill, then your brain will be used to doing it. So as you play, your psychological and mental barrier may also be broken in that way. So I'm not sure if I'm fully getting that. Maybe that's what you're saying. Hopefully it is. If not, feel free to clarify. Continuing on, and maybe you'll clarify in the rest of the mail. The important thing to understand is that collecting those mistakes is just a first step, and that there needs to eventually be a processing of those mistakes and starting to make those connections between them, which will be the root cause analysis. This is to say that the diagnosis of the deeper problem comes from viewing problems in isolation as a necessary first step to develop that larger understanding. Okay, so you're saying that we can't just study, we can't just look at the problems that we're making, but we have to integrate the problems and find the source of the problem. Okay, I can totally agree with that. It is obvious that a teacher is a big help in this. However, I think that it's important to go through that process for oneself, because you need to develop a first-hand experience of your problems rather than having a teacher say, you need to do more of X and less of Y, and not being able to understand what they mean by that, even if you trust what they say is true. It means that when you say, I have problem X, then you have a lot of examples of those problems, why that's an issue, and the degree to which lots of mistakes happen along those lines. Thanks for your very thoughtful comment, Danger Noodle. I feel like you're on point with the fact that you can't just let the teacher do all the analysis for you, and you need to do some self-inventory and find out why you're always dying, right? Your groups are always dying, and like you're always losing on points or something, or you're always missing snapbacks. I think overall, Go is a very difficult game to improve at, so it is going to take a lot of deep thought and self-inventory to get over these mistakes that you do a lot. But at the same time, whenever I've improved, I don't think I've done anything to analyze myself. I think that I just kind of I've been doing everything I've been doing, and suddenly I just see that other people are making mistakes that I don't make, and it's just I become a higher rank, and I don't know why. I don't know what happened. So on the one hand, I totally agree that you do have to analyze the root cause of your mistakes, which is very, very important. And it's like something that a lot of people skip out on. People just focus on the mistakes and they don't go further than that. And they just say like, oh, this was a bad move. And then they move on. They don't see like what caused that mistake, whether it's from a psychological or from a game perspective, right? It could have happened a lot earlier in the game. But at the same time, like I just kind of keep studying and I just keep playing, and suddenly I find myself at a higher rank, and I don't know why. It's very strange. I think I left with more questions than answers with that, but thanks again, Danger Noodle. Blue Moon Eat Lions said, hello, I am the young Q player that was mentioned in Eric's letter. First of all, awesome podcast. I love the fact that now I have a Go podcast to listen to. Oh, awesome. That's awesome that you're writing in and you're an acquaintance of Eric's. Let's hear what you have to say. Eric is a wonderful teacher and has been super helpful in not only letting me get better at the game, but also making the game more enjoyable. One of the points I like to add on for people who review for their fellow player is we, as the weaker player, likely know that doing more problems or getting stronger at reading is important. However, if we are stuck on a pattern of behavior, it is very unlikely that we would know. There's a lot of value in asking the why did you make this move over you did this move wrong, here, have a better one. That's funny. You're commenting on the episode about Eric's letter, but in the last episode, which is just about to be released and has been released now, I actually talk exactly about this. The fact that you need to question whether, you need to ask the student why they made that move instead of just telling them what the right answer is. Continuing on, everyone needs an Eric in their club. Infinite resistance with personalized, toggleable playing style really helps. To the fellow single Q players who are out there who think they hit a point where growth has become slow, it's okay. Just know that it really does not have to be the case. There are so much stuff to learn, all of which is tangible and will affect your playing strength. For me, if I really enjoy a more academic study style, learning new variations and motifs. You just have to get over the parts holding you back, break the mold of style. Once you get good at noticing the psychological parts of you holding back, when you notice the times where you rushed a decision, those issues become a lot easier to fix. There's so much to learn and go. Every direction is up. Thanks for writing in Blue Moon Eat Lions. And you're talking to me, single digit Q player who hit a point where his growth has become slow. And I'm going to keep at it and try to study and play more games and try to understand my root causes. Just a comment again on one of the things that Danger Noodle said back there about the teacher saying you need to do more of this and less of that. The thing is that what the value, I know you're saying is about like the self-analysis and you have to find the root of your problems, and I totally agree with that. But the thing about the teacher is they will see things that you will not. That's the key, right? You have these root causes and you don't notice that because you're focused on other things. There's like a million things to focus on and Go. And I think the thing is that we're so focused on working on the skills that we know we have to fix that we're not spending time to think about the problems that we might not be aware of that we need to fix. And this is life too. Like, a lot of people, they get so caught up in trying to fix the issues they know about that they don't take a step back to see, what am I missing? What's the big picture that I'm missing? It's like, think about people who get caught up in greed and materialistic things, right? Like you go off and you're so focused on your appearance or your vanity, right? And you're spending 100% of your effort, and all you're asking is like, what can I do to make myself look better? What can I do to change like how my body looks and what and you're not stepping back like, hey, are you trying to be happy? Like, are you happy doing this or not? Like, there are important things, and you have to kind of step back sometimes to figure those things out. Or someone might have to tell you like, hey, you're doing great, but you don't look happy. And you need someone out there to tell you those things. But I really appreciate the encouragement, Blue Moon Eat Lions. It seems like you're kind of on an up, what do you call it? an improvement streak or something, because that's the way you're talking sounds like someone who's been kind of on that track. So I hope you are improving as well. I will take your encouragement and try to apply that to myself. Thanks for writing in. Ben Kyo writes, this one really summed up a lot of what I believe in and practice as a Go teacher, so I'm very much in agreement with Eric. Much of what was said describes the situation of many students and league members of mine, and most of my focus in teaching and coaching has been on those things explained in this episode: psychological barriers, mindsets, Go paradigms, awareness, methods of trying to improve. I think these things are much more powerful than a few pieces of tactical knowledge, about as much as the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. A concept is worth 1,000 memorized moves. Only in this case, instead of concept, we ought to encompass those things like mindset, paradigm, etc. I really resonate with this episode, and I think my students who listen to this one would notice the similar ideas, so I'm going to share this one with all of them. This topic is so big and so many areas and examples to tackle. Thank you, Starpoint Podcast. Hey, Ben Kyo, thanks for writing in. That's awesome. You're going to share this with your students. I want you to do one of these and talk about stuff like this on a YouTube video. I would love to listen to that as well. I think it's a deep topic. It's kind of hard to wrestle with, and there's so many things that we have to think about as Go players. And I think I like your approach, because as Go teachers, I think you got to be kind of like a sensei. Like you got to like be a teacher is not just a teacher of the mind, but well, I guess a teacher is just a teacher of the mind. But what I'm trying to say is, like, it needs to be holistic. Like, it can't just be like an information giver, like a librarian. It needs to be like one-to-one. There needs to be a relationship with the student. You need to have this connection and understand the mentality and mold that student. And I think, it's a difficult thing to do. But thanks for writing in. And then finally, Sadaharu writes, I think interest or passion plays a big part in improvement. When I first started learning, I played like meh for a few years. After my passion for the game became stronger, I naturally began to remember the things taught by my teacher better, and I tried to apply them more to my real games. I actively played out more Kifus and tried to find more avenues of learning too. The bad news is I forgot why my passion suddenly grew stronger, but I guess different people have different reasons why they're interested in Go. That's why looking at the person rather than just the moves is important. The coach or teacher should try to touch on the parts that attract them to Go and expand on it, rather than teaching them things that they are not interested in learning. If they are not really interested but are casually browsing, then finding the thing that will spark their interest is important, but difficult. Thanks for writing in. Yeah, that's totally true. It's like, well, especially for beginners. When you introduce someone to the game of Go, the first thing is absolutely not knowledge transfer, not skills acquirement. Like, it's all about, can you make this person love the game enough that they stick with it? Because once you spark that, they basically start improving on their own. It's like a plant. You just water it a little bit and it starts shooting up like a bamboo shoot. And so, yeah, I totally agree with that. But on the flip side, I think there are some people who would prefer a more rigid, like, this is how you get better type of teacher. This is the kind of thing that I feel like I would respond well to. I think a lot of teachers, they kind of say like, hey, what are you interested in? Like, what do you want to learn? Like, hey, do you want to learn Joseki? It's like, well, no, I want actual structure, and I want people to say like, hey, this is what you do, 1, 2, 3, and this is how I think you should get better. This is what's worked for many students, so this is what I'm going to assign you, and this is what I'm going to drill you, and this is how you're going to get better. Not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants that drill, that rigidity, that structure. Some people want more of a nurturing, thing that you kind of describe, and kind of feeding their passion. And I think even for the people who are like me, who kind of want that rigid structure, we can't burn out. Like, we also need that, like, passion side of it. We need to spark and feed our passion. That's something that I hope to do with this podcast, to feed people's passions and keep their interest in Go. Sometimes I'm like, I'm personally not in a Go playing I need to play Go. I need to play more Go because because I'm losing concentration. I'm losing focus, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this study that I talked about today, it's ringing true for me. It's like I need to play more Go so I can be more on the ball and have a more spry, cognitively fluent mind. What was I saying? I don't even know. But anyway, listener mail always gets me that way. I don't know. I'll try to remember what I was trying to say. Thanks again, Sadaharu, for writing in. I really thought I thought I was supposed to talk about, but it's lost in the ether. It'll come back again in a future podcast episode. But the question of the week this week is, do you have any experience teaching Go to children? What has that experience been like? Have you seen people develop and change as a result of playing and learning Go? I would love to know your thoughts on that question. Or if you have something else to share about Go, or you want to ask me a question, you can comment on YouTube or the Reddit post for this episode, or you can email me directly at starpointpaduk@gmail.com. That's starpointbaduk@gmail.com. And if you're a YouTube listener, I would appreciate a like and or subscribe. And if you're a podcast listener, reviews and ratings also help. Very, very special thank you, as always, to Jeffrey H., James B., and John M. for supporting Starpoint. And you know, I was playing a game with a Spanish speaker the other day, and we were just kind of discussing the game, and I just made a side comment saying, hey, that's endgame right there. And they said, yo sé. It's a little trilingual humor there, very small audience for that, but for those of you who got it, if you know, you know. Thanks for listening. Keep playing Go.